Right, we all know why we're here, so let's get this done and over with. Hello my brave knights, princesses and princesses, and welcome to this hidden object video. It's not a hidden object video, what am I talking about? This is a video about hidden object games and their pet peeves. Now if I sound a little nasally, it's because my nose is stuffed. That's about it though. The rest of me is fine. Because of the fact I've got a slight headache. So, welcome to the show. In this video, we're going to talk about the pet peeves of hidden object games in the room. And what is that, you ask? Well, it is darkness. To basically sum it up. Imagine you're walking in a hidden object game, just doing what you normally do, finding objects, solving puzzles, and unlocking doors. And then you come upon a room, or an area, or a wall, or anything of that sort. The character says, it's dark. Now, in all of the I've played a lot of hidden object games. And when I see stuff like this, I usually look into the room and decide whether or not is it dark or not. And depending on if you could actually see into the room yourself as you and not the in-game character, then there is a problem. Some hidden object games have done it right, where darkness it's dark, you can't see anything in the room. But then there are games like the one we recently played, that being Medium Detective, where I could read the writing on the wall, even though it was dark, just because I could. Games, it's not just the character in the game that's not supposed to be able to see things, it has to be you yourself. Else it just takes away from the experience. Now I know that some people would argue and say, well, it's darkness. If the character says it's darkness, it's dark. It's dark. Like, there have been some instances in hidden object games where I see a light switch, and no matter how many times I'll click on it, the character will always say it's dark. Too dark. And I'm like, has anyone ever heard of, you know, adjusting to the darkness? Like, our eyes can adjust to the darkness, like that, to do. So, if you're going to make a hidden object game, and you're going to walk into a dark room, or a dark alley, or anywhere that's dark, the room has to be dark, like pitch black dark, like you can't see a thing dark. Like, if you could see some objects in the dark, but not everything in the room, that's fine. But other than that, how is it dark? How? About is spiders, spider webs, and leaf piles. Now the problem about this is the fact that depending on the character you're playing, it all depends on their perspective, really. Like, you could walk over to a spider web, literally, and your character might remove the web just fine. Or they might say, eek, a spider web, or yuck, a spider web, or I'm not touching that. Or, I don't want to get my hands dirty. Something like that. So, you have to instead go and do a manhunt for a broom, or a brush, or something of that nature, just to remove a simple spider web to get a simple thing that you'll need for later. Now, another thing that can happen is the spiders will appear. And yes, I get it. Spiders are poisonous. Some of them. But spiders usually are more afraid of you than you are of them. And so, instead of saying eek spider stick, what I would do is I would just find the longest stick I could, pick it, and just move it out of the way. It's not hard. Next thing is leaf piles. Now, I understand that sometimes leaf piles can be dangerous to sift through, but I've sifted through leaf piles myself. Let's just say there usually isn't anything in them worth being scared of sifting through leaf piles. Now, if The hidden object game, when you're about to reach into the leaf pile and it has a snake like shoot up from the leaves, then I could understand us being scared of leaf piles, but not this. No, it's ridiculous. You can sift through the leaf pile with your hands, even if they are mucky. I've done it. If you need to, you can go find a rake. It shouldn't be hard to find it, but wait, this is a hidden object game. They're going to be hard to find. So there is locks. Now don't get me wrong. Locks in games can be very fun to do. But when it comes down to Epics and Elephant Games, they used to compete over locks. Then Epics kind of wisened up and was like, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're going to just do incredibly intricate puzzles. Appreciate it, by the way. But Elephant Games, it doesn't take much to count the amount of locks that are in one section of the game. I did this in a haunted hotel game recently, where I literally counted how many locks were in one single spot, and I was like, this is ridiculous. There was even one part when you had to open like 6 birdhouses, and you had to literally take one piece from the first birdhouse, put it on a different birdhouse, open that birdhouse, put another piece on another birdhouse, and so on and so forth. And they each were locked until you unlocked each and every one just to get one single thing. I know they're just trying to delay you, trying to, you know, make the game last longer, but that's a lot of locks for one place. Like, seriously. And don't get me wrong, locks can be fun sometimes. Like, they can lead to some interesting areas, but unless you give me a reason why there are so many locks in one place, I'm going to look at you and feel a little underwhelmed by it. It's a little ridiculous. The next pet peeve is animals and bribing them. Now, if you are somebody who's gotten past the darkness and rationalized the fact that we can, for some reason, adjust to it, and you've gotten past, you know, spiderwebs and leaf piles, and you're not questioning it because you're like, whatever. You've gotten past locked doors and locks everywhere, and you're just like, okay, this is getting really underwhelming. And then you come up to an animal, and they're holding something you need, or they have something you need, or something of that nature. It could be a dog, it could be a monkey, it could be a cat, it could be anything. And you have a few options. The first is you have to bribe it for it to give it to you, for whatever it has to give it to you. Or you can make it go away by scaring it off with a gun or a horn or something like that. Whatever the case may be, you got to get that animal away or get it to give you whatever it is. Or sometimes you have to bribe it so it will help you in a situation like scaring off a bird. The best example I can give of this was probably a Medium Detective, when we literally were chasing a cat around that bonus game, just trying to get the keys from it, and then we had to literally give it a collar before we could pick it up and have it chase off a bird. And to do that, we had to do a ton of other things. It's like, why? There are other ways to scare off a bird, by the way, so it's not hard. The point is, it's not necessarily wrong to bribe animals or to, you know, give them some incentive to help you. It's just that sometimes, just like with locks, it can get a little underwhelming. And I know people would argue and say, but it's just to prolong the game, make the game more interesting. And I'm like, yes, I agree with that, but it happens too much sometimes. Like, I recall there being one, I think, hidden expedition where we literally were bribing animals left and right just to get things, and it was like, okay, this is like the animals took over society kind of thing. So, lay up on the animals, please. I mean, I know crows like shiny objects. That's understandable, but I don't think every animal is going to literally, like, I don't think a cat is going to bolt in and immediately jump onto the keys you need. Unless it's just programmed to. Next peeve is the 50-50 chance. Now, if you're like me and you've played hidden object games for a long time, you eventually start to pick up on things. You eventually start to, as it were, call things out. I did this in a few hidden object games where I called the fact that usually it's either the first person, the second person, or somebody you meet in a hidden object game, and you just sit there and go, he has to be the bad guy. He has to be. There's just no question about it. And you usually turn out right. And you sit there and go, wow, that was easy to figure out. The best two examples I can give you guys of being able to guess who the bad guy was probably that one hit. Was first of all an expedition I did last year with that sword. You guys remember? With the guy who called us a little carp, and I so called the fact that he was a bad guy. If you're going to make a good hidden object game, don't make the villain predictable. Just don't. Because the other thing that happens in hidden object games is there's another pet peeve I'm going to talk about, but when it comes down to it, a good example of unpredictableness of, you keep on guessing. And I'm going to keep citing it because I can, is Mystery Case Files 13 Skull. You want a good example of villains and being duped and being like outplayed almost? Go play 13 Skull. You'll thank me later. Go play Mystery Case Files, Dargo, 13 Skull, Escape from Ravenhearst, and Ravenhearst. Those games were the golden age of hidden object games. That is the perfect example of unpredictableness. And you've played hidden object games for a while. Eventually, you start predicting what the villain's motive is, and usually, the first guess is the right one. The villain wants revenge. The villain wants power. The villain wants eternal life. The villain just wants to kill everybody because he can. Or they want money. A good example of the predictableness of these games is probably most of the hidden object games. Most of the hidden object games I played last year. I predicted a lot of times what the villains wanted, and I was like, "Come on, man! There's better things to want." And everybody will die around you, and eventually, you will grow old. Like, immortality doesn't mean you'll stay young. It means you'll grow old, and you'll keep growing old until nothing. Until you're reduced to literally a corpse. Like, sure, people would probably be like, well, in fantasy games, they could have immortality and stay young forever. Yeah, but then they would end up like a good example, Dorian Gray. They would hate themselves eventually. They would eventually want to die. There's a point where you explore everything in life and you'll realize it's all vanity. Revenge. Well, revenge isn't really fun. Anyway, like, getting revenge on people is just, why? Like, sure, the person wronged you, but instead of getting revenge on you, you could help them out and help them achieve something in life, and they'll thank you later. Like, sure, if a serial killer killed your family, yeah, I would want revenge too, but it's not my place. So, anyway, those are just some of the peeves. There are plenty of others. The point is, it's like talking about America being great again. Only I'm saying we can make hidden object games great again. It's just a matter of, can you do it? Can you actually do it? The appeal for hidden object games these days is slowly losing its flavor anyway. Because there are all these other games that are happening, and people are more prone to going towards AAA games or something of that nature. But we shall see. When it comes down to it, Mad Head is a good example of a good hidden object game. Like, they did good on Maze. They did good on Shadow Play. The first Maze, the first Shadow Play. But that's, like I said, that's a video for another time, because if I talk about them here, I'm just going to go on a rant that will go on forever. So, that is my take on the pet peeves of hidden object games. You guys can comment down below. You guys can argue down below. Go ahead. I want you guys to leave a like and subscribe, because there's always room for more. And goodbye.